Hello YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to the Outsiders channel. Tonight I'm going to be answering a question that was posed today by PhDaD. He called it a meeting of the minds, and the question was all about how would you handle mass combat rules in your RPGs. Well, it's been many years to get to the point where I'm now that I feel comfortable handling that. And I suppose it comes down to two parts really very simply. The first one is an abstract one, which is the bit where you could battle mat a particular piece of the battlefield, and that is the part the players are involved in. Now that's normally sort of tells you it's low level play because they don't have the influence to control the armies in the field. But of course there are likely to be two aspects to it. I think in some ways it's easier to do the abstract bit, the bit which you draw out a small piece, like the taking of Pegasus Bridge for an example or something along those lines. That's a lot of fun. But what you need is a combination of the two, and it's that mass combat part that has to have an appeal that is immediately fun and understandable by all the players, and that's quite tough to do. That's a tough ask, because you don't want a game that's so overly, if you try to use like miniature rules or something, it takes on a strategy. It takes on such a strategy level that's not necessarily for everybody. But one thing I did find that really works well, and it's something that I've really become fond of, is if you can find, and this is what I'm going to talk about here, if you can find a game that's really a beer and pretzel game, something that's still a lot of fun to do, it's highly regarded, so you're not just, it's not on a whim you do it, it's highly regarded by board game aficionados as a fun game, but has enough strategy in it, and you can tailor the mechanics to suit the RPG you're playing, you're onto something. And one thing I noticed is a gentleman by the name of Richard Borg, who does a fantastic series of games. He started off, I've got it here actually at the moment, it's called Battle Cry, which is an American Civil War game. And obviously there's really very little relationship between that and most fantasy games, which is really where I come from. But what I noticed in the mechanics, and when I subsequently went away and had a think about it and realised he did lots more games, he does a series of games called Command and Colours. Now they're fantastic. You've got Napoleonic and you've got Ancients, and the Ancients one is phenomenal for most fantasy genres. And I pretty much think as well that it's so good you could tailor it even to a futuristic setting with just a few changes, to be honest. And what I like about the components is they're all wooden and they're just blocks. And what's lovely is you can pick sort of fantasy sides from history. So you could use for your game, depending on how you've set up a particular culture, that might represent, say, the Celts, or it might represent a Roman army. But what's beautiful is that the rules are very easy for everybody to pick up and play. And what's also nice is the board of all of Richard Borg's games in that sort of series, and I'm going to lump the Battlecry game into that, have three parts to the battle board. And what's nice is that as the GM you can sit one side and players can sit the other, and you can give the players, because it works on cards and a setup, and the DM can do the setup, the players can adjust it a little bit, and then of course the battle will commence. Now the cards that you have in your hand dictate which sections of the board can move. So there's a fog of war, so although you might commit a certain side of the board, once you don't have a card that can move that board, you pick a card up every turn. There's always a card you get every time you play. You get to play one card a turn. After you played it, you get to pick another card up. But once you run out of cards for a particular side, you're in a fog of war situation. You can't get the orders across, and so that leaves you, which is beautiful, the potential for the abstract as well, the ability to come back and have the players have to do something. So there's a scene where maybe one of them has to go over there and try and push on the troops or get them to respond. So I found those brilliant. It was very easy as well using that game to figure little things out in my own mind mechanically. So for example, if somebody had leadership skill, you could give them an extra card, because technically most battles should be fairly well balanced unless one troop type is better than another, and then it's easy. The referee might have 6 cards, you might only have 5 as a group, but you might get an extra one because you've got leadership, you might get an extra one because you've got this fantastic mage within the party and you decide as the GM that his ability is that good, he would make a difference, so you get another card, and so on. So the players probably have more cards than you, but it's still a fantastic game because you don't know, because there are very simple dice used, what the result of any combat or engagement is going to be. So it was really fun for both the players and the GM, and the players loved it, and I put that out there for you because I think it's a brilliant way to handle mass combat in a fun environment and show you how quick it was, which I think is the real beauty. You don't necessarily want a mass combat to last ages for obvious reasons. You don't want it to be so strategic that it's not fun. And you could literally, in an hour, run through a good size scenario, which is fantastic, and it just shows the flexibility of the game. And even if you set the same field up twice, it never plays the same because the way the cards work. That's absolutely brilliant, and it allows you some scopes to the GM, because after all they are cards, so you can choose which cards go into the stacks. You can move things around. It has a lot of uses for this question, I think. And still with the flexibility, of course, that taking it from a strategic situation into an abstract, you can draw up on a battle map quite quickly anything that the players involve themselves in. So that's what I found absolutely brilliant. And I really just commit and share that with you, because I'm not going to spend my time in the nicest way discussing any deeper side to it. I mean, I've seen many systems have attempted it. None of them have really worked for me, as I said at the beginning. And they really left a bit of taste. They were too complicated for what they're trying to do. This is simplicity itself, but it handled in a way that allows maximum flexibility, and surely that's the point. And I think we could all learn, a lot of games designers could learn a lot from that when they're actually thinking about the big pieces that come at the end of campaigns, those big steps, or ongoing parts in a war campaign, to the point where the players become more than just the abstract parts. They become the strategy behind it, and the fights, they dictate the direction. That's a really clever thing to try out, and honestly I would suggest that to anybody. So that's my submitted answer to you. That's how I would go about dealing with mass combats. I found it a lot of fun. The players' feedback has been tremendous. I've done this many times now, and a game required quite a lot of use between playing the board strategy out as well as doing the abstract parts quite a lot of the time, and it's quite a lot of fun for me to do that, and I really enjoyed it. So that's been my idea for you, PhDaD. I hope you like it. I hope others find that of some use, and I share that willingly with you. Anyway, I've been Sean Connors. This has been Outsiders, talking about handling mass combat rules. Thank you very much for the question. Take care of yourselves, and happy gaming.